2013 GSTL Season 1. NS Hosa, Axiom Acer, MVP, FXOpen, LGIM, Azubu, Prime, Startail.
Welcome back to the GSTL. We are really starting things off here now. We're going to get into the first match very soon. I am stoked.
Yeah, so am I. This is going to be so good. We have a best of 7 today, and it's going to be between FXO and LGIM at the new GSTL studio in Gangnam.
This is just so sick. The crowd is phenomenal today, and my mood is as well. I mean, look at how many fans we have. Foreign fans here from all over the world. We've got a very large audience who loves Squirtle. Korean fans as well.
Yep. Now today is going to be really good. I'm very excited. You can really see that everything is happening behind us right now.
Yeah.
We're a little bit elevated here on our balcony, and I like it quite a lot.
I'm actually like looking at my preview screen right now because I want to see how cool it is. I'm like, wow, that looks pretty cool actually, it turns out.
Yeah, it's actually really nice here. I mean, it feels good, and this is going to be a great season. This is Heart of the Swarm. It's not only a new beginning for the GSL, but also for StarCraft 2 in general. And let's be honest, HOTS has been awesome so far.
It really has. You know, the game is so much more fast-paced. With whether it's, you know, whether you agree with the balance or not, it doesn't matter. It's still exciting. And sometimes arguments and disputes about strong units actually can make the game more fun to watch.
Yep.
So you have Speed Medevacs, you have Widow Mines, you have Vipers pulling things. The game is fast-paced. It is exciting right now.
You know, there's a lot of discussions going on about the balance right now, and I feel there are still a few things where Blizzard might have to tweak a little bit. But in general, the game feels very good.
It feels good, you know. Everyone's talking about, is Zerg too weak? And then Zerg wins MLG. I mean, it is life after all. But it's still, it just goes to show that the game is really well done, and Blizzard is still, you know, holding off a little bit longer on making any big changes. They want to see more play first.
Yeah, the thing is, when you talk about MLG, yes, Live won the tournament, but then you look at the results of the other Zerg players, and they all fell short really right from the bat. The thing is, one tournament will never show you balance. And if you just talk to players, some players agree on a few things that they think might have to be changed, but in general, if you compare to Wings of Liberty, it feels so much better.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see how this Team League is going to play out, because we have a round robin where the teams don't get knocked out so early. And in previous seasons of the GSTL, you get knocked out instantly if you lose, or you have one extra chance maybe with the double elimination system. But now, with the new format, as you guys can see here, the winner takes home 50 million won, runner-up gets 20 mil, and the round of 4, round of 8, 5, and 3, respectively.
If you want to convert that prize money, the only thing that you have to do to convert it to US dollars is usually just delete 3 of the zeros.
Yeah.
So the winner gets like 50,000 won.
It's quite a lot of money.
$50,000, my bad, sorry.
Yes. That 50,000 won.
That would not be a lot. That would be like 50 bucks.
That would be like 10 budachiges.
Yeah.
So you can see that every match is a best of 7 until you get to the playoffs, and the 1st through 5th place teams will advance there. You can see how the playout is played. It's a similar format to what we've had in the past.
In the players, we have a best of 9. So now in the regular season, it's going to be a best of 7. Every single game counts. You can't experiment this much anymore.
You know, by the way, look at this. Look at the final. It goes all the way until July. Our final is going to be in July. So this is going to give so much time for stories to develop. What if you have a rivalry develop within these two teams? They play now, they play against each other later again in the playoffs. There's so many different ways that cool stories can develop with so many teams here. And with the round robin system, there's just so many possibilities of how this season can develop.
Yeah, and I love just how this has been changed. This is going to be really exciting. And I just want the games to start, to be completely honest with you. We have a great opening today, and I want this to happen. We already had this storyline developing when we saw just Ruin play in the GSTL preseason, and now he's going to be the starting player for LGIM.
Yeah, and we have some new maps, by the way. Talking about new things, Red City, 4-player map starting with no restrictions on spawn locations, so there can be close positions. It's the total 4-player map.
You know, that's so funny if you think about it, because one thing that the GSL always had was forced spawning locations. This time it's going to be very different, and this is going to be so interesting. There are only a few maps where you could not spawn, where you could spawn on different locations, then cross. That we had so far in the whole history of the tournament. very few of them.
This is my favorite new GSL map, by the way, DMZ. It's a 2-player map with a lot of architecture in the middle of the map that makes engagements, you know, kind of go towards a player who sets up first better. It reminds a lot of people of Crossfire because of all the ramps in the middle of the map.
I was just about to say, why do you like this map? Everyone is talking about how similar it seems to be to Crossfire.
I feel like, though, with the extra pass you can take on the right and the left side of the map, it could be a completely different experience than Crossfire. Let's take a look at Akalon Waste. This is a map you guys are all familiar with. This is the official ladder map. The 2 watchtowers have been added in the center map, which are destroyed automatically after 7 minutes, and the destructible rocks of the second expansion are deleted.
The more I see Akalon Flats, the more I like it, to be honest with you. It's a really great map. This is, of course, also ladder map. We have Star Station.
Yep, and the horizontal spawning locations have been disabled for the map, so you won't spawn close in that way. So it's a pretty big map overall. It's actually one of those maps you see on the ladder where there's really relatively easy bases to take at first, but as the game gets longer, the bases get further and further apart from each other.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So the map pool that we have now for the season is going to be really exciting. A lot of the maps that you used to see on, that you can still play on ladder, and then we have a couple of new additions to the map pool. It's going to be interesting to see how the players are going to adapt to this, how the overlord placements, for example, are going to work out, where you will have your forward pylons and what's going to happen to the scouting patterns. Maybe even the double barracks openings, where will you go for those proxy barracks? So that's all these things have to be figured out now.
Yeah, the barracks locations, the overlord spawn, or not the spawning location, but the rally location. These are things that happen on new maps that the players haven't had that much time to work with. They've been on the Korean server for a little while, but not too long. So I think at first probably the players are going to avoid these maps and try to use the maps that they're more familiar with, the ones that are on the ladder, some of the older maps like Daybreak. Let's take a look at the team information though.
Here we start.
Yep, here we go. FXO versus LGIM, our opening match here. The champions versus the team of champions.
Yeah, here we have them with code S slots, with slots in code B, and also, of course, the players that are in code A. Funny as it is, FXO right now, they have 2 players in code S, but not a single one in code B. So very different if you compare it to the lineup of LGIM.
Yeah, very different. It's very Protoss heavy over on LGIM, and those Protosses are not regular Protosses. They are quite strong.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see how the teams are going to play today, because FXO, they have been the champions 2 consecutive times now, and LGIM always the team that everyone expected to be the champion, but they never really came through. They have a lot of things that they want to do in Heart of the Swarm right now and in the GSTL season. They really want to show their strength, and today is going to be, I feel, their biggest challenge.
Yeah, it really will be. They're up against the champions. It's so cool and ironic that we have these 2 teams colliding in our first match in the new studio. So my friends from Dubai here on the front row, checking things out. Oh. Is he going to do a third pose?
No, he's like actually now at this phase where you're like, okay, it was fun, now get the camera away from me, please. I don't know what to do anymore.
I was like, second pose, go into a third pose, maybe not.
Yeah, the transition from one pose to another is always quite difficult. It's not easy to pull that off.
Well, let's take a look at FXO's lineup. They have quite a few players here. As you can see, Grubby has been removed from the roster as he's not currently in Korea.
Yeah. He's definitely not going to compete in the season, but we have a lot of familiar faces there. Shoya, of course, he already stated that he will not play anymore, that he will completely focus on being a captain now and being a manager for the team, the head coach.
Yep, there he is with all of his teammates with the double victory patches on his jacket. You can see Tyr here.
To the left, look at that, our makeup girl. She tried to dodge.
She tried to dodge, but you guys got to see
Yeah, you could see her for a second.
And here is LGIM's lineup. Same number of players, of course, listing MC, an SK player who has partnered with the team.
MC playing such a great tournament at MLG, then he lost to Life. Life was just too strong, but he defeated a lot of strong players before that. He took out Bomber, he took out Tasia, and he was also very, very successful against Hero early in the tournament, so a strong addition to the lineup.
Now you can see Hirai and the new coach of LGIM as well at the top left. One thing to note is that Losira has changed his ID to his first name, but we're still going to call him Losira because look at his hair. He is still Losira.
Yeah, I talked to him a little bit earlier. C translated for us, and C did quite a laugh about it. It was like, Marine King actually also joined the banter and was going like, I don't know why he changed his nickname, but he wants to be called by his first name now, no Lucira anymore, he's just Kango now. But yeah, it was kind of fun. I personally feel that I'm going to be a little bit sad when at some point we have to introduce him as Kango instead of Lucira. It's just such an iconic name.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he will be remembered for that name for forever. It's, you know, once you have an ID and you start things out, you kind of build a reputation with your name, and that's why even though Bjorn has changed his ID so many times, I will still remember that he was first Bleach. Like, I will remember that for the rest of my life, but you know, he had to build a new name for himself, and then he's built Bjorn, and now Lucira will have to do the same thing.
Every time I see Bjorn, I think about him taking the name of a Bleach character, I would always go for Urio. I don't know, this is what really suits him the most, I feel.
Yeah. I would love to see Bjorn take some Death Note names instead as well, but here are the teams getting ready to walk down here into the studio, and there they go.
There we have in white Squirtle to the left, LGIM and FXO. The first day, the first match here at the GSTL Season 1 2013. New studio in Gangnam.
Look at how many people are standing that cannot even sit. There's not enough space for them right now. MC, Lucira, and Nesty, and the new LGIM coach.
Yeah.
Looks very young, in fact.
Yeah, indeed he does. You know, an opening match today is something that really excites me. The reason being is that the time when Rune came out for LGIM, that was the last game of their match against Axiom Mesa, and he defeated MMA, and he looked so strong. Today we have him as the opening player. He's up against Lucky, a player that we've seen over and over again for Team FXO, a great starting player. He can prepare for an opponent very well, but even if he takes the game, he's one of those players that can definitely take a second or a third. Hasn't been too successful in the GSTL recently, but I feel that this is going to be a very good match, and we will see what Rune can do, if Rune can actually win the opening match, and how well he can then transition into game 2 and 3. So I feel the opening match already has a lot of, it's a lot of like dynamite power to it.
And the question becomes, how many Zergs are we going to see today? Will we see Zergs come out in high quantity? I don't think so.
I actually think, you know, with Team FXO, the players that you have to play lead.
You have to play.
So FXO will at least have 2 Zerg players. They have a lot of strong Zerg players in their lineup. They could use Whale, for example. They could use like Sirius is also in there. You have a lot of players in the lineup that are really strong, but you have to at least play 2 of them.
Yeah.
If you go the full distance. On the other hand, we have LGIM, and I could certainly see a few Zerg players of LGIM coming out there. But with all their Terran and Protoss, I feel LGIM is probably the team where will not see too many of them.
I agree.
Maybe Lucira.
Someone that's interesting is, and I did not see him. I don't believe he's here, but SC has recently rejoined the team. So I wonder what that means for them. Are they going to have this new Terran player? How much has he been playing Heart of the Storm? He's been going through some transition periods. He switched games. He's had a lot of health problems. He's someone I think that if he goes back into hardcore practicing StarCraft 2, could be a great Terran for FXO.
It's going to be interesting to see what the teams are going to do today. The format changed a little bit, and even though it seems to be a minor change, going from a best of 9 to a best of 7, it's very, very important to note that in this scenario, a lot of the experiments that the teams have been showing in the past are completely... You can't go for that anymore.
No.
You can't just throw like 2 players out there who don't have the experience. Every point counts. If you lose 1 player, then you have to be like really well aware that they are going to take it.
Yeah, this is where things really start to count. There's no trying, there's no training field here. This is, you win it or you lose it. Your points start to stack up. You want to get in that top 5. You want to get to the playoffs. And these teams are not messing around anymore. Only in interviews do they mess around.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So there we go all out. And while we're talking about new starts and production, we are very sorry, but we can't hear ourselves think. So it would be very nice if you could reduce that sound a little bit. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
We've been trying, but this is like the point where I say, no, this is too much now.
It was a bit loud in our ears, but that's fine.
I didn't even know what I was saying. I was just talking, trying to go on. I was like, this has to stop in a second, and it didn't. Well,
I think we're going to take a look at the players very soon here. This is a new studio, so a very new setup. The players are going to have to get adjusted to a new booth, a new playing environment. And I know it sounds strange, but when you're used to playing in one studio every time you play a match and suddenly you go into a new studio, it feels very different. It can get into your head a little bit.
Exactly. You have to get just used to everything. This is also the same is true when you go to an event. when you go to a new event, there's a new environment, and you have to adjust to the booths and everything. So they will have to get a bit of experience just playing in this studio here for the GSL now in Heart of the Swarm. I feel for most of them it's going to be quite easy, but still it's something that you have to consider.
Yeah, it's very important. Now, we talked about the opening match a little bit. It's going to be a Protoss versus Zerg. Ruin, I think, going to be the favorite here, but I'm looking forward to seeing what sort of strategies Lucky has to show, because right now, as far as the metagame goes, Zerg players are starting to figure it out a little bit more.
The thing is, a lot of Zergs actually have a bit of a problem in the late game against Protoss. If Protoss survives and is able to get like a strong air army out there, Zergs definitely have a big problem.
Two units, the Void Ray and the Colossus.
It's actually not even the only composition that is really strong right now. There's this one player in High Grandmaster that is playing this Protoss player. It's a barcode ID, but he has a very, very like unique strategy. What he does, he turtles up. I've seen it several times being played on Hyun's stream. He played against Scarlet. I talked to her about it too, and to other players. The guy, what he does is like he takes 3 bases and he cannons it up like crazy. He's only supplying this with gateways and gets a couple of sentries out there, but then he goes into triple Stargate and aims for Tempest and High Templars with Storm and Feedback. And it is unbelievable how strong that composition is once you get it. It's really, really strong. Some of you might have watched those games on ladder on their streams, but this is something that we might see here. And it is so tough to beat. There was a scenario where the Protoss player had 4 bases, and Hyun in both games had like 8 of them, but he didn't have a chance.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely something we could see. I'm looking forward to it. I hope we do get to see something like that, because that sounds very unique.
I would love to see how the players here are trying to beat it, because so far the players that I talked to that didn't find an answer. I would really love to see this going on here, and maybe today is going to reveal who that player is, because as I said, on ladder he was using a barcode ID, so we don't know which player that actually was. I would love to see like this style and we'll be like, ha, I have seen you play, I know who the barcode ID is now.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. Like, that's the funny thing about barcode IDs is they're so secret. Now here's Ruin.
It could be Ruin.
It could be. And Ruin is a player who has shown great matches already in the preseason. He's got some expectations going. We saw Lucky play in the preseason as well, and he often starts for FXOpen, but against Ruin, I feel Ruin is the favorite based on the performance we've seen from him so far going into this opening match.
Yeah. No, Ruin is definitely a player that could do very well here. We've seen him in the preseason, as you just said, but this is definitely one of those games or one of those players that I was really, really looking forward to. He looked so strong against MMA. I really want to see him perform today and want to see if that was a fluke or if he is really a player that is just so good, so confident that he can compete on this level right away without any previous experience.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, look at that lineup of LGIM. You said this before, it's such a pivotal starting match, because if LGIM takes a lead here, they have so much more flexibility, I feel, with their lineup today at this curtain start of at the very beginning of GSTL here, and this moment of Heart of the Swarm, the meta game that we're in. It's a very new game, and with all the Protoss players they have and all the raw talent they have, I just feel like FXOpen needs a lead here if they're going to take out LGIM. If they start to fall behind, they may become desperate. You know, Leonok is someone they rely on, but he's a Zerg player, and how well is he going to do? He didn't make as well of a performance in MLG as a lot of people expected him to.
If I was actually FXO, I would try to use the new maps to my advantage. The new maps are something where you can tell that the other players will probably not have played that many games on those new maps. So you could try to go for snipers here. You know, I mean, we talked about this. What is probably going to happen? LGM will just focus a lot on their Protoss and on their Tyrant players. So trying to just go for a few strategies on and just pull this off, that might be the one thing that you can do. Like, design a strategy on a map, set one player here, okay, if we get behind and we have to choose the map, then you are going to snipe a Terran on this map. You are going to snipe a Protoss on this map. Just trying to work with this.
Yeah, and, you know, DMZ is a map. Based on those ramps, man, I feel like you don't want to send a Zerg out against a Protoss on. That may be some way to deal with the Zerg player that comes out for LGIM. But again, is that the issue? What if LGIM wants to snipe Leonok on that map on DMZ if they practice a strategy like this?
It could work the exact other way around. But the one thing that we had in the past for LGIM was that they seem to be, I would even call it a little bit careless, a little bit condescending going into these matches, which was one of the reasons why they were never even able to grasp this title when they really wanted it.
Right.
But coming into the Heart of the Swarm, it feels like the attitude changed a lot. They said it over and over again. We didn't perform as well as we wanted in the past. We want to change that now.
Yeah, and Hirai has talked all the time about using new players and trying to get new players out and put them in the booth and get that experience. He's already done that. He had the preseason to do that. They won the preseason, so he got these players out showing Ragnarok in the booth, for example, showing Ruin, and showing everybody that these guys are good. And they're not messing around. Now they have the experience, and we're starting to the real season, so there's no more time for them to worry. Hirai doesn't have to say, well, I have to make a tough choice. Do I send this guy out who doesn't have experience now? He needs the experience, though I have to give it to him eventually. Now he's already taken care of that first step.
Yeah, he has. And with the best of 7 format, it's definitely not a format when you want to experiment. Having one player out there as the starting player is one thing, but then later on you have to make sure that you just pull out the big guns, make sure that you get those points in. The starting player always has a little bit of an advantage because he's the one who knows exactly who he's facing. So he can research his opponent's playstyle and just develop a strategy that is supposed to counter his opponent. After this, you can only operate for basically what kind of matchup you want.
Yeah. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we have 8 teams, and if only top 5 get into playoffs, a tie can happen. And if that happens, every set matters. So you want to make sure you win every set. You don't want to. There's no throwaway games in this format. None. There's no, I'm messing around, I wanted to give this guy experience. That just doesn't work here. If you throw away too many points and you get into a tie situation later, you're like, well, I guess I shouldn't have sent him out on that map just to see what would happen.
Think about what happened to StarTale. StarTale, when they played in the preseason, everyone was expecting them to take it, and when they played, suddenly Live lost his first game. Was like, oops, how did that happen? But then they lost like 2-3 games in a row, and suddenly we're like, well, I'm not quite sure what's going on here, but we just lost our 2 best players, so what are we supposed to do right now? They didn't take those matches serious, but you can... I mean, rest assured, this is where it all counts and where it all matters, and they know that. Every single team.
Absolutely. And you know what's really cool about this and really important about this, too, is in the past, if you had a bad day like that, you're just out. Or you're now in the lower bracket where you're going to be out next time you lose. Now, if you have a bad day, it's okay. Yeah, it hurts you, it hurts your standing, but you're not eliminated. There's a lot more chances here, and everyone gets matched up against every other team, so you really get to see who the best team is really, because if you lose in the first round, for example, like Prime did, and you lost the team that won, it's like, well, should they have lost that early, or should they have been in second place? You'll never know.
If one of your key players is at a foreign event and can't play, it will definitely affect the standing in the season, but it's not going to break your neck anymore.
Red City is our first map. This is going to be awesome. It's a new map. We're in the new studio. It's a new season of GSTL.
And we are jumping into the game right away, ladies and gentlemen. We have our opening match today here at the GSTL 2013 Season 1. It is FXO versus LGIM. It is Lucky versus Ruin. Let's jump into the game here. Starting to the top right of the map, we have in orange our Zerg player for Team FXO. This is
FXO Lucky.
Good to see that Ken is still here.
Yep, Ken replaced Street Fighter Voice. He's now in here. And starting to the bottom left of the map, we have Lucky's opponent. He's starting for LGIM, the opening player. Here's you guy.
LGIM, Ruin.
Ruin. And we've already seen Ruin's skill level. This guy is smart, he's fast, and he plays a style that you might expect. I mean, he's just a good player overall. There's nothing that stands out about his style necessarily. It's just that he's quick. He knows how to turn engagements into his favor. His storms are excellent. We've seen that already for sure.
He was an amazing player when we saw him for the first time in the GSTL preseason against Aximesa. He played very well here. And now we have Lucky apparently going for a hatch first play against his Protoss opponent, which is really interesting.
It's a 4-player map, you know, so nowadays you have to scout all locations, and if your Protoss opponent gets unlucky, he may not be able to see this, but he has seen it, and he has the Forge going down, so we are going to see very defensive play from Lucky here. He's going to have to absolutely make sure that no cannons go down.
Lucky has to be careful now, you're certainly right. He needs to make sure that this probe is not going to place down a pylon. I don't really feel that Ruin is going for it, but there's always the threat.
Look at Rainer in this picture. Zeratul looks a little bit sad.
Yeah, it's not... we know it's not Legacy of the Void just yet.
Yeah, he has to wait a little bit longer.
Zeratul is getting close. Yeah, I can certainly understand.
And with a very careful scouting from Lucky, there's no cannoning going on here. He's got the probe threatening back there, but he doesn't actually place anything. He knows that the drone is following, and this is just not going to work.
We have the Nexus being placed down, and Lucky now in this position is getting away with the hatch first. He now has a pretty good economy that he can rely upon.
This is just, it goes to show that a 4-player map can change things so much. Just not knowing where your opponent's going to spawn 100% can really affect you. And everyone's aware of this. He's going double hatch here, by the way. Extremely fast third hatch.
This is a very fast third hatch. It's actually a little bit insane. Usually you see that around 4 minutes, 4:20. But now we have this at 3 minutes and 40 seconds. He really wants to have a good economy and a very good start to this game.
Ruin has his probe in such a clever location. There's a big area in the main base that the creep does not cover, that he's hiding his probe in just on the edge. And this could be a big problem if Lucky wants to hide some sort of tech. The thing is, once he goes in there and he sees no gas, he's going to know the hatchery is up really fast.
This is once again one of those scenarios as a Protoss player where you hide your probe and your initial goal is to just make sure that you get a second scout into the base. But then when you realize, well, this unit is never scouted, you could use it for a forward pylon. And if the Zerg player doesn't see that pylon, suddenly his entire main base is completely exposed. So this is potentially game-breaking.
Yeah, it really is. In this situation, I feel it's just going to be a minor annoyance for Lucky, but it could have been a game-ending, as you said. And he's going to keep that probe in there. If he wants to, he can keep it in there all the way till past Lair Tech to scout for Aspire, for example.
To tell you the truth, I feel that at some point we might just see him. If he is about to finish his warp gate research and the probe is still there, I feel we might have a very, very difficult gateway attack to for him to hold off.
Yeah, that's very true. He goes and shows the probe now, and he's going to be very aware. No gases. Must be a third hatch. Nothing else makes sense. He's going to go and see the first gas down here as well. This is unfortunate for Lucky.
Yeah. I would have really liked him to just go and take a chance here. We've seen this in so many tournaments. When you miss the probe and the probe is in your main base and then there's a pylon, then there's just nothing that you can do anymore. And Lucky, from what we've seen so far, would have never scouted this pylon. But as it is, he uses it for the scout, he gets the scout in, and now he decides to go into a Stargate.
Yeah, most likely going to start some Phoenixes here to put some pressure on. And Void Rays in Heart of the Storm are much stronger than they used to be, but we're not going to see those most likely until the mid to late game, if we see them at all.
Yeah, the Air Force or the Air Army in general for Protoss is very strong against Zerg. If you have a lot of Tempests and you have also a few additional High Templars that can use feedback against Vipers and also Storm against Hydralisks, for example, Mutalisks, this is just really strong. You can do a lot with that. And of course, as you mentioned, Void Rays are just so good these days. There's a lot that a Protoss can do, but first of all, he has to go at least up to 3 bases. Pulling that off on 2 is just way too difficult.
Yeah, it certainly is. Just looking at this map, I mean, this is my first time looking at it this much in detail. I've looked at a lot of thumbnails of it, basically, in the past. It looks like the bases are relatively close to each other, so this is going to be a good map for Frost to just slowly push out, take more bases, and build up what has been called the Death Ball. And I think that's what we're going to see Ruin start to do here. He's cleaning up Overlords first with his Phoenixes.
The Overlord's making sure that there is no scouting going on at this point, so there's really nothing that he can do to get into the base again. But the first thing that Lucky does is get a few Spore Crawlers out.
Yeah. So, you know, it's kind of a weird choice that you have to make. It's not a wrong one, but he chooses to clean the Overlords and try to supply block rather than go for the hidden Phoenixes. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both. In this case, he forces the Spore Crawlers early. Not going to be able to do much else with his Phoenixes.
I'm very interested to see what Lucky is going to do. We had a lot of Zerg players now going into a Hydra Den, and this is exactly the choice that Lucky is going for too. He starts off with the Hydras, and from the Hydras on, he has a lot of different choices to make. He can go into additional Swarm Hosts, which is not that common anymore. You see a lot more Zerg players trying to go for the Hive Tech then and add a few Vipers to pull Colossi in.
Yeah, usually you don't see Swarm Hosts unless one of the players gets, one of the Zergs gets drastically ahead early on.
Yeah, if you go for like a 2-base timing push, then Swarm Hosts are a little bit more common, but in general, it seems like Hydras and Vipers are the better composition.
Right. Now, the Phoenix is getting a decent amount of scouting information here, and since he's already seen the Hydralisk Den, He's going to start his robotic support bay as soon as that robo is done. And these first 6 Hydras are not really going to be a problem. Ruin can actually continue to run around them, pick off Overlords, and try to grab some drones if he sees the opportunity.
Yeah, and one of the things that you have to always be aware of if you're a Zerg player is that the initial Hydra list, they won't help you too much. If there are a lot of Phoenixes, then you have to be still careful. Keep them close because those Hydra lists, they are still light armored. And this is exactly what I was just talking about.
Oh, wow.
The first 2 are gone, another one is down. Those Queens are able to do some damage. At least one Phoenix bites the dust here, but still a good call here by Ruin.
Yeah, it was excellent control by Ruin. He did end up losing some Phoenixes there in the end, but regardless, he was able to keep the Hydralisk count low. That's what he wants until he gets those Colossi out. And Overlord speed was made very early for Lucky, but the problem is he can't see these pushes out. He can't see these move outs because the Phoenixes are still controlling the map.
He's going into Hive now, exactly what we predicted earlier. Even taking his 4th base, he really wants to get the Vipers. Abduct is just very strong. Was at a point where I was really looking at Abduct and was wondering if it's a little bit too strong against Protoss. It's very difficult for a Protoss player to keep those Colossi at the back of the army. But what you have to do to counter those Vipers is you need to get your Templar archive up. You need a few High Templars, and then with a feedback you can work against Vipers.
Yeah, that's basically the only way. Everything else is just going to get grabbed. And Stalkers are not the answer to try to pick them off. You need those Templar.
The problem with the Stalkers is if you really want to take out the Vipers, you basically have to blink into the Hydra list.
Yeah, and you don't want to ever be there.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when your cooldown is up then and you can't retreat anymore. So that's very difficult. The answer is definitely High Templars, and this is why we are currently seeing the Templar Archive being built. Also, of course, for the upgrades.
Yeah, it's quite critical. Now, I'm curious to see what the next move of Ruin is going to be exactly with the Hive Tech. I mean, the Hive Tech is something that we've seen very commonly with Broodlords in the past, but now Ultralisk and of course getting the Vipers out is more common to see. He's making 14 drones right now. We actually don't have the observing computer today, which is going to be fixed very soon, but I don't know. Has he scouted the 3rd base of the Protoss? He must know at this point. Oh, the Overlord can definitely see that.
Yeah, he definitely has to. And now we have this move out with the Mothership Core, which is always very good for the Protoss player because you can just recall back home to your own main base if you see that this is not going to work out well for you.
Oh, really nice pickoffs here with the drones. Just using that extra Phoenix range that you have in Heart of the Swarm to pick them off. Gets away, kills a few drones, and the Queen doesn't lose a thing.
Yeah. Now those Vipers are joining the game though, and this is where it gets a little bit difficult for the Protoss player. He has to be very careful now. Especially if you think about it. One of the attempts that a lot of Protoss will make is push out with a Mothership Core because they think they are safe and they can TP back, like use that recall. If a Viper on the other hand gets an Abduct on the Mothership Core, suddenly that option is gone and you might lose your entire army if you were too careless.
Yeah, you have to be extremely careful with dealing with that. 4 gateways going down here. Templar Archive as well going up at this moment in time. And the Templar Archive is very critical here. The Colossi, yes, they are damage dealers, but once they're grabbed and they're eliminated, the Hydras and the Roaches will make quick work of anything on the ground. So he has to have some sort of AoE, whether it's Storms, whether it's the Colossi, and in this case, it's going to be both.
Keep in mind that those Vipers are really expensive, especially when it comes to gas. 200 gas for each Viper, and they are very fragile units. So if you get too close to the Stalkers or the High Templars, you are done for. Storm even being researched. Great tool against Hydralisk. And here we go. The first Abduct is in. The second one, and immediately the first 2 are gone.
Oh, and the 3rd Colossus getting grabbed here. He pulls back. Not a very good adept there. Now he finally gets it. Really nice micro by Ruin, able to save his Colossus for a little bit longer. But this Zerg army is just way too much. Grabs that Colossus. And Ruin looks like he may find himself in ruins very soon. The Roaches running through here, picking off the Zealots.
Double Time Warp has been used, but it doesn't help the Protoss player all too much. 120 supply for him against 200. Lucky is once again maxed out, trying to go in there. And Ruin is just desperately trying to get his Storm out. He needs Storm against this army composition, but there are just so many units for the Zerg streaming across the map, trying to lay waste to this Protoss base.
The Vipers were just way too much for him to handle. He could not get those feedbacks off. The Vipers grabbed those Colossi and really grabbed the chances of Ruin taking this game away from him. Storm is done, but it's just a bit too late.
The position was just not good for Ruin. You need to have those High Templars at the front for the feedback. You need to make that happen. If you can't do that, then suddenly we see exactly this happen. The Colossi being abducted into the middle of the Roaches and the Hydras, and then it is nearly over. But we are not there just yet.
Yeah, he hasn't quite finished the game, but he's killing the probes here at the 3rd. He's got Ultralisk on the way. The Ultras on the way here are going to be a big problem because in Heart of the Swarm, they're much stronger than they were before against all types of units. They do that flat damage now. And Ruin just really trying to save face at this point. He can't hope to come back in this game.
Yeah, this is looking really bad. We have now Ultralis just joining the battle. We have more and more upgrades coming out. Once again an Abduct. And this time the Colossus might escape. No, the second Abduct, the Vipers, they are just there. And there are no High Templars, there are no feedbacks. The Colossi, they are gone. This is not looking good for Ruin.
It falls over, rolls over dead here. Another Abduct takes the Colossus down. And at this point, Ruin, he just looks a bit silly trying to defend against this. Lucky's flashy pulls aren't even necessary for him to end this game.
Lucky's going in, and then he's like, come over here. Oh, the Hydra Dance. We are going for the new Hydra Dance animation. Lucky very confident that he can win this game, and it does not look like Ruin has an answer to this composition.
No, he's fighting Hydras and Probes, and I gotta say that's not a good fight for the Probes. Ultra's taking things apart, and the Ultra's doing a dance.
GG!
And, Zerg takes game 1. It's Lucky who does it.
Yep.
With really nice play. The timing with the Vipers worked out really well because it was right before the Storm was ready, right before the feedbacks were, he had the Templar, but they weren't in position just yet.
Exactly, that was the big problem. I'm not quite sure if he did not expect the attack or what the problem here was, but in the end what happened is that he did not have the High Templars where they should have been. He could not get those feedbacks off.
And that was his demise. Really nice timing there by Lucky, just hitting it oh so well. And then going into Ultralis, of course, at the end of the day, was a good choice as well. It didn't really come to that, but if the attack hadn't gone as well, he still had that transition ready. It was available to him.
Exactly. He just had an endless stream of units going down to the bottom left. We saw him take base after base. I think on the end he was on 5 bases. So this was really well played by Lucky, and you could see that he prepared very well, not only for the opponent, but also for the map. So he really played both, and that was what won him the game in the end. So very well done, and FXO in the lead against LGIM.
FXO takes game 1. Now, who are we going to see? Do we see another Protoss? Does he try to pull out DMZ? What is Hirai going to do here? Is he going to send out a mirror? A Zerg versus Zerg? That's also a possibility.
Yeah, we could see a Zerg versus Zerg. I would rather like to see a Terran player now, though, because we saw a lot of Terran players doing really well against Zerg at MLG. With the exception of Life, but I feel that the Terran players that we have on Team LGIM, they are really strong. They have a lot of Heart of the Swarm experience, and I'm not quite sure if you send out another Protoss here.
Yeah, I mean, Yoda is a great choice right now.
Exactly. Yoda would be a really good choice. MVP has shown that he's very strong these days, so that would be 2 Terran players that I would love to see.
Yeah, even though Yoda is doing extremely well right now overseas, I feel like he's the type of player who's you're not pushing things too far to send him out this early. He's one of those players that you can count on, rely on in a pinch, and I'd like to see Yoda here. He's my personal pick going forward.
On the other hand, we might see a player like Squirtle. Squirtle has been saying that he feels very confident in Heart of the Swarm. He has shown several times that he is good against Zerg, so that might be a player that Hero is also considering now for the second game. But as we said, in the best of 7 environment, you have to send out a good player now. You cannot
There's no messing around.
Yeah.
Who's it going to be? Squirtle in the center. On the right, we've got Yoda, and it is Yoda.
Yes. Nice. I like it. A good choice.
This is such a great choice. I have to say Hira and I think alike on this one, man. He's the guy you want to send out right now because he has the experience. He's already shown great games, and he's not necessarily who you'd expect.
Who, Yoda?
Oh, I mean, not who FXO might be expecting for game 2.
Oh, I don't know. With the recent events that actually Yoda has under his belt, I feel if I would have had to predict 4 players per day, I would probably have said it's going to be Yoda, it's going to be MC, and then either MVP or Squirtle, depending on if you want to send a player out that has more experience with Out of the Swarm, which would then probably be MVP, or then of course you have always Squirtle. If you don't want to go for a Zerg player, I mean, there's always this Yoda.
Yoda is looking very confident, very prepared. Codex player ranked 17th in the GSL. We are going to have a 5-minute break when we get back. We'll reveal the map and we'll have game 2